Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online Regulation G VGC ladder in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and provide live commentary as I go. In this video, I'm going to be featuring the team that won the very first Regulation G Regional Championship, featuring none other than Miraidon. Rajan Ball was able to claim the Indianapolis Regional Championships with a really innovative team centered around Miraidon. This is a Pokemon that a lot of people were underrating coming into the beginning of the format. A lot of people had it ranked under Pokemon like the Calyrex forms as well as Terrapagos, but in the end it was Miraidon that was able to win the entire first tournament. Turns out, when you give this Pokemon a Choice Specs as well as Electric Terra and you have Helping Hand support, Tailwind support, this thing just does ridiculous amounts of damage and can knock out basically everything in the format. The team is really fun. You've got two means of speed control with Tailwind, Whimsicott, as well as Trick Room, Farigiraf, and you've also got a lot of good offense from things like Ursaluna Blood Moon and Rock Ogerpon, and an Incineroar to boot as well. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down below, and thanks so much as always for joining me. If you enjoy, would really appreciate it if you consider leaving a like in the video or subscribing to the channel. It really helps out a ton. Anyway, let's dive into things. If you're interested in trying out the team, the rental code is on the screen and there's also a paste down in the description below. Like I mentioned, this is a team that revolves very heavily around dealing massive amounts of damage with Miraidon. Whimsicott and Farigiraf are amazing partners for it because Whimsicott is able to set up Tailwind for Miraidon and Farigiraf is able to block priority attacks, especially moves like Fake Out, which otherwise would render Miraidon useless for a turn. Ogerpon and Ursaluna both can deal massive amounts of damage, and Ogerpon in particular can also provide utility with Follow Me, and you've got Assault Vest Incineroar as well. This is the team that won the entire tournament, and there's actually two versions of it. And there's another version featuring Ditto over the Ogerpon slot that Aaron Traylor brought and finished top 8 at Indianapolis Regionals with. If you're interested in trying out the Ditto version of this team, the rental is also on the screen. This team was piloted by Aaron Traylor, who had built it together with Rajan Ball and a couple of others, and Aaron also made it to the top 8 of this tournament, highlighting just how powerful of a pick this team was for that very first tournament. Ditto, in my opinion, is one of the hardest Pokemon to use, and so if you're deciding between the Ditto and the Ogerpon version, I'd probably start with the Ogerpon version, but Ditto is a really cool Pokemon if you are a flexible player and can identify when to bring Ditto and use it to copy opposing Pokemon. This Pokemon can just absolutely sweep through opposing teams when you're able to copy a restricted Pokemon. So it's a really fun option, but not necessarily the easiest to use, but wanted to highlight both versions of this team if you wanted to try it out. First of all, just for some quick context, the Indianapolis Regional Championships was the very first official tournament using the Regulation G format. It had nearly 700 players, took place in the beginning of May 2024, and I actually got to commentate this tournament, which was such a blast. Wolfie Glick was also on the cast, and it was his first time casting officially. We got to work together, and it was just so much fun. So I'll link the VODs for the tournament down in the description below if you want to check it out. But the main, of course, star was Rajan and Miraidon being able to claim the entire championship. Like I mentioned, Aaron Traylor also finished in the top 8 with a super similar version of this team. And Miraidon was extremely underrated coming into this tournament. If you look at the usage stats, like, there weren't nearly as many Miraidon as some of the other restricted Pokemon, and between day 1 and day 2 usage, Miraidon was actually only at number 5 out of all the restricted Pokemon. So I saw some decent play, but not nearly as high as, for example, the Calyrex forms or Kyogre in day 1. Koraidon also had a higher usage rate than Miraidon on day 1, and then in day 2 it was even a smaller percentage of the field, right? So despite not as many people using it, it was able to win the entire tournament. And part of that is because I think people just did not understand how much damage Choice Specs Miraidon in electric terrain does, right? This team also supports it really beautifully, has a lot of tools to enable Miraidon as much as possible, and so yeah, in the end it was not a surprise to see it claim the entire tournament. Highly recommend you all checking out the VODs because Miraidon just looks absolutely broken in a lot of the games where it was on stream in this tournament. Breaking things down, the first Pokemon we need to talk about is Miraidon. This Pokemon is just ridiculous. When you have Electric Terra plus Electric Terrain plus the ability engine activating and giving you an increase in special attack and Helping Hand support from Farigiraf, there's really nothing that can actually resist the electric type attacks on this team. Your only way of really dealing with the electric types is having something that's completely immune to it, like a ground type Pokemon or Ground Terra, or something like a Lightning Rod user. Otherwise, you're going to be in for a really tough time against Miraidon. This thing just stacks up so many different damage multipliers, and it's also ridiculously fast. Miraidon has a lot of really powerful moves as well. Electro Drift is going to be your primary electric type attack, but Draco Meteor is really nice for things that resist electric type attacks. For example, I've had opponents who will Terra Grass into something in order to survive an attack from Miraidon, or Terra Electric, for example, and then Draco Meteor will just destroy it, right? So you don't always need to be clicking electric type attacks when you're using this Pokemon. Volt Switch is an amazing move on this Pokemon. I think when people think about Volt Switch, it's normally seen as a pivoting move, but when you have Electric Terra Choice Specs Volt Switch in terrain, this can legitimately get a one-hit eliminate knockout onto Pokemon like Incineroar. That's a huge deal. Also, even when you're not knocking out Pokemon, being able to just chip away at something for like half its health, switch Miraidon out, bring out something like Ogerpon or Ursaluna, do a lot of damage, and then closing out games with Miraidon is a really effective strategy with this team as well. And then finally, you've got Discharge. Discharge is a move that isn't seen very frequently because obviously you can damage your own partner, but it's really good on this team because you've got Ursaluna as one of the main partners, right? And so this is completely immune to Discharge. Farigiraf on this team is also Ground Terra. You've got Assault Vest, Incineroar, Whimsicott, so you can discharge really easily with your Pokemon out together, right? And so as a result, for example, Miraidon can be easily led with Farigiraf, where you just go Ground Terra, Helping Hand, Discharge. You can also go Miraidon Blood Moon and just go Discharge immediately. Discharge is a move that can be incredibly effective in closing out games. It does ridiculous amounts of damage, and if you're able to just get a little bit of chip damage onto everything on your opponent's end, you can create these win conditions where Miraidon comes out and just goes for Electric Terra and clicks Discharge a couple of times and just picks up knockout after knockout after knockout. So much about this team is positioning with Miraidon and using it properly, but the damage output from this thing is just absolutely ridiculous, and it feels so powerful when utilized correctly. Miraidon's going to be the primary damage dealer, but you also have Ursaluna Blood Moon on this team. Farigiraf and Blood Moon is not a new duo. We've seen this for a while, and it's been a really effective combination. A couple things to call out, though, is that the Blood Moon on this team is actually max speed. Max speed here allows you to outspeed max speed Calyrex Shadow Rider. So you can run Modest. The difference between Modest and Timid is basically, do you want to outspeed a couple of things like Calyrex Shadow Rider, or do you value more damage? That's kind of an individual personal decision that you have to make. But with this, it's really nice because then you are able to outpace Calyrex, which is a really big deal when you set up Tailwind, and they don't. Otherwise, pretty standard for Ursaluna, max special attack, max speed, and very standard moveset. Farigiraf is really interesting. This moveset actually looks pretty different from how Farigiraf was run previously. You know, people would use Safety Goggles, which you don't really need since Miraidon exists on this team. People would consider Citrus Berry. This is an Electric Seed variant with Miraidon, right? So the idea is that if you have Miraidon as terrain up and then you get the Electric Seed activated, this thing can just take physical attacks super well. It's particularly valuable into things like Calyrex Ice Rider. Farigiraf in particular is really cool against both of the Calyrex forms because against Shadow Rider, Expanding Force does very little damage. Psychic type attacks in general don't do very much. Astral Barrage you're completely immune to, and so Calyrex has actually struggled to hit Farigiraf. Against Ice Rider, with this defense boost, you can take multiple Glacial Lances, and you also pressure with Foul Play, which does a lot of damage in return. So the general idea is that you've got Trick Room and Helping Hand. You also have Foul Play and Terra Blast. Terra Blast just gives you a single target attack, which is kind of nice, and of course you have Ground Terra, Terra Blast, which can do super effective damage into Steel types and Fire types, just to name a bit. And the general idea here is that you've got a pretty defensive spread. I think really valuable to have Bold Nature here with Electric Seed just to kind of further amplify your defensive capabilities. To round things out, you've got Whimsicott. This is going to be one of your primary lead combinations with Miraidon. Whimsicott Miraidon allows you to immediately go for Tailwind, Electric Terra, Volt Switch, which is really nice. Pivot out, bring out Blood Moon, start dealing a lot of damage, and then look towards closing out the game with Miraidon. The main thing to call out with this Whimsicott is that I think Encore is one of the best moves on this Pokemon. A lot of times people will try to protect to stall out Tailwind or try to play defensively around Miraidon to see what move it locks itself into, but Whimsicott can quickly capitalize off that by locking your opponents into a move with Encore. One fun thing to do with this team is also to have Whimsicott in the back. I think when people see Whimsicott immediately, they're thinking a little bit harder about Encore, but it's really easy to not think about Whimsicott when it's not immediately out on the field. Then one thing you can do is have something like Incineroar Miraidon, you pivot one of these Pokemon out, you bring out Whimsicott as something is protecting on turn 1, and then Whimsicott can pressure Encore onto them on turn 2. So the pressure that Encore provides alone is a really big deal. You also have Cornerstone Ogerpon on this team. Cornerstone Ogerpon is cool because it just does a lot of damage. Rock coverage turns out to be actually really valuable in this format. And you think about things that are not very strong against rock, right? Like Tornadus takes super effective damage, Chi-Yu takes super effective damage, Calyrex Ice Rider takes super effective damage, Incineroar takes super effective damage. Grass coverage is also really nice for water types like Kyogre, for example. So this just has a really nice offensive spread against a lot of common Pokemon in the format. Sturdy is also an awesome ability because it essentially gives you like a second Focus Sash on this team, and it allows you to lead combinations like Ogerpon plus Miraidon, Ogre Ursaluna, Ogre Farigiraf, and opens up a lot of different lines as well. And so this is just a really nice Pokemon that offers a lot of good offense into the format, but also has good utility with Follow Me. The last Pokemon is Incineroar. Not much that needs to be said about this Pokemon in particular, other than that it's really good. Assault Vest in particular is an amazing item on this right now because there's so many special attackers in the format. This thing makes Calyrex Shadow Rider miserable. It also, of course, can provide super effective damage into a lot of common Pokemon in the format. This Incineroar is actually a little bit slower, as you see, with the 29 speed IV, and so that what that means is you'll often be going after your opponent's Incineroars, which is nice because it means that they'll often parting shot and then you can U-turn out after them. This is something, of course, that you could decide to change if you want, but it's something to think about, like how your Incineroar matches up against opposing Incineroars. So yeah, in terms of ways of playing with the team, I'd highly recommend, one, watching the VODs from the tournament, and two, Rajan and Aaron did an awesome team report with Audi, which is on Audi's YouTube channel, so I'll link that down in the description below. But I think you generally want to think about enabling Miraidon as much as possible, right? So go-to leads include Whimsicott Miraidon, Miraidon Ursaluna, Miraidon Farigiraf. I think those are all really powerful. To be honest, Miraidon can be led with anything on this team, but it's about making sure that Miraidon gets to get a proper attack off, and then you can go from there. If you want to go with Trick Room, for example, you can go with Incineroar Farigiraf with Blood Moon in the back, Miraidon in the fourth. You could go Ogerpon Farigiraf to go for Follow Me, set up Trick Room, and then go from there. I generally first ask myself when using this team, how do I outpace my opponent? So then it's asking myself, do I need Tailwind or Trick Room? If yes, which one of those two routes do I go under? And if I don't need Tailwind and Trick Room, how do I just overwhelm my opponent with offense really quickly, right? So an example of a non-Trick Room mode or Tailwind mode is just Miraidon Ursaluna, where you just pressure so much damage right from turn one. But those are just a couple things to think about. If you're looking for ways to beat Miraidon, you'll first want to think about the following: Ground-type Pokemon, Ground-type Terras, Lightning Rod users, for example, things that are just completely immune to Electric-type attacks. Miraidon does like to click Volt Switch a lot, so for example, if you're able to switch in a Ground-type Pokemon as it's Volt Switching with this Choice Spec set, it can be caught in a really difficult position going into the subsequent turn. If you also have terrain such as Indeedee or Rillaboom, you can of course override the electric terrain, and that reduces Miraidon's damage output significantly. Terapagos, of course, can be used in order to get rid of terrain for one turn as well, and so those are all some things that you can think about when trying to beat this Pokemon. I think in games where I've struggled the most is where Miraidon just doesn't take the most positive traits, right? For example, maybe something survives a big Draco Meteor and then I just get knocked out in return. With Miraidon, you really want to be picking up knockouts, and so if you're able to survive these attacks and knock Miraidon in return, that's a really big deal. I think that this team also has a lot of fast-paced offense, but as a result, you're not nearly as defensive, right? And so it can crumble pretty quickly. One example is I've gone up against opposing Tailwind teams that have a Choice Scarf Pokemon. So I had one game where my opponent had, for example, Tornadus and Kyogre, and basically my Miraidon had Terra'd early. They got their Scarf Urshifu out into the perfect position with Water Terra, and then Surging Strikes kind of just destroyed my entire team, right? So that's one thing to think about as well. If you are able to actually outspeed the Miraidon, that can play a huge role in beating it, whether it be a Choice Scarf Pokemon under Tailwind, for example, or something that has a speed boost, for example, like Iron Bundle can capitalize off electric terrain and then can outpace things as well. So that's another example. I've also struggled a lot against Zamazenta teams in particular because nothing on this team can really take Body Press super well. Body Press is like a 2-hit knockout onto practically everything, and a lot of Zamazentas are going to be Grass Terra, so you struggle to deal a lot of immediate damage onto it. You kind of are forced to try to bait out a Terra, then Draco Meteor, but it's tough because if you're forcing out the Terra, you're often probably clicking an electric type attack into it immediately, and then you're forced to switch out and then bring Miraidon back out. And so Zamazenta teams, which are definitely on the rise right now because it just won the most recent tournament over in Europe, is also something to watch out for. But yeah, those are just a couple of things that I wanted to note that I fought against that have given me trouble. All right, we've got a very classic Calyrex Ice Rider team here with Urshifu, Insing, Gholdengo, Amoonguss, and Pelipper. Basically, this is one of the go-to Calyrex Ice Rider teams right now. You can swap the Gholdengo with Raging Bolt or Farigiraf, but it's a really strong core. So this matchup is really interesting because you actually have a ton of tools to deal with it, right? Miraidon just does ridiculous amounts of damage. So one of the leads is Instant plus Miraidon, and then you pivot into Whimsicott. And the idea behind this is on turn 1 of the game, a lot of times, like, they'll try to double protect to get around Fake Out, and then you can just bring out Whimsicott and suddenly pressure Encore immediately. Big question is, what do you want as the 4th Pokemon on this team? Blood Moon does a lot of damage, but Farigiraf is cool because it has a really nice matchup in a Calyrex Ice Rider in particular. The problem with Farigiraf is that it's kind of weak into everything else, and so, like, with this core, you're relying a lot more on Miraidon with damage. So, it's kind of a toss-up. You also could theoretically go Ogerpon here, because you pressure with Ivy Cudgel, as well as Power Whip. In this game, I'm thinking I am going to go with the Farigiraf. So one thing to pay heavy attention to is how we utilize Miraidon. Miraidon has to be the carry in this game because I'm not bringing Blood Moon. So I have to be very careful about how I'm actually playing with this Pokemon, right? If it takes too much damage early on, that can be really, really bad for me. And if it gets knocked out immediately, the game is essentially over. So it's going to be Calyrex plus Incineroar. More than okay to see that lead. Okay. Our engine activates. Their Intimidate goes off first. So what we can do in this position is simply pivot the Incineroar out into Farigiraf. And I probably want to just commit my Terra here. Like, Grass Terra, Ground Terra, both here are really weak into Ice Rider. Ghost Terra is not that effective. This just helps out defensively in case they survive. If they have, like, more bulk than they should. But essentially, Terra here, Draco Meteor into Calyrex, switch into Farigiraf is the play turn 1 here. In an ideal world, they just try to fake out into my Miraidon. And try to Trick Room. And then Draco just KOs Calyrex. Okay, they're staying in with both, so that's a good sign. Turn 1, it could be Protect Ice Rider and then Parting Shot with Incineroar. That's certainly a possibility. So let's see if that's what they want to go for. Nope, it's going to be a Terra instead. Okay, that's promising. Hoping to see Grass Terra here and then Draco just dunks on them. Beautiful. So far, so good. If you're going for this, then I think it should mean you're not protecting Calyrex. Yep. Fake Out is blocked here by Farigiraf. Amazing. Draco Meteor connects. That's the dream scenario. And that KOs Calyrex. Beautiful. This should give us a huge lead in the game. The game's not over by any means, especially because Choice Scarf Urshifu, if they have Pelipper as the last two, can be fairly scary. But yeah, this was the dream turn 1. I think turn 1 with this team alone, there's so many implications with what you switch in. Farigiraf, Whimsicott, for example. Being able to block Fake Out, being able to threaten Encore, both of those are a really, really big deal. Gholdengo now comes out, which I'm okay to see. With Gholdengo out, Seed has been activated here. I could Helping Hand Draco Meteor, but I think we're also at a point now where I kind of want to just use all my electric type attacks. I don't know the item on this either. It could be Assault Vest. So I don't mind pivoting Miraidon out into Incineroar and just going for Foul Play onto Gholdengo. Get some chip damage so that Flare Blitz can threaten with the knockout. We have a huge lead after turn 1 though, so now it's about just like taking that lead and converting it into a victory. Like, Farigiraf just to block Fake Out on turn 1 is a really, really big deal. Gholdengo opts for Nasty Plot. That's fine. I think Nasty Plot Parting Shot here makes a lot of sense from their end. Yep. And with Nasty Plot, like, Gholdengo definitely has comeback potential, so we certainly want to show it respect. The upside is it just takes one electric type attack from Miraidon to KO it. Let's see what their final one is. Amoonguss. Okay. So Foul Play here. Foul Play and Leftovers. Okay, that's actually pretty scary then. Because Whimsicott at this point is not really strong at all. Blood Moon would have been way better in the back. We're looking to, I think, ideally just end the game with Discharge, is how I'm thinking about this right now. The upside is that Assault Vest Incineroar is really good into Gholdengo, right? But they could be Pollen Puffing, which is really scary. Terrain is up, so you can't Spore me right now, which is a nice upside. And I do have Helping Hand Flare Blitz here, which is quite nice. I might honestly just straight up go for Helping Hand and Flare Blitz right now. Okay, Amoonguss pivots out. Nice. Back out into Incin. Makes sense. Yeah, the fact that Golden Go has leftovers and Nasty Plot makes it a little bit more difficult to, like, slowly deal with. Or quickly deal with, I should say. And, like, Whimsicott right now is just not a very strong final Pokemon for me, unfortunately. Golden Go protects, but that's fine. So, this is a big turn, because essentially I can now U-turn out, finally, right? They're not gonna... They can't click Fake Out right now. And, like... What I'm aiming for is just for Miraidon to come out and then click Discharge. That's kind of one of the big win cons. Although, I might not want to do it this turn, to be honest. I think we want to get one big attack off into Golden Ghost, so then Discharge finishes things off the next turn. And with 2 turns of terrain, if I U-turn right now, Miraidon comes out, but then they can just protect to stall out the last turn of terrain, which doesn't feel great. So here, I think I'm actually going to just go for Helping Hand and Knockoff and get rid of the leftovers. Because, yeah, we're looking to play towards a Discharge endgame at this point. Okay, Golden Go Nasty Plots again. That's fine. And they're probably going to Parting Shot here. Yep. And that's fine. Because right now, it's not about, like, dealing massive amounts of damage into Golden Go. It's more about pivoting right now. So they'll bring Amoonguss back in. But I think they're doing a really good job, to their credit, in trying to find a way out or back in this game. It's great damage by Knockoff. Cool. No more leftovers now. This is the last turn of terrain. If you're my opponent now, you could look towards Pollen Puff into Golden Go. And then make it rain. To which I think I want to... yeah, I mean, Pollen Puff here actually would be really strong as an option. So I'm actually going to Helping Hand Flare Blitz here because I want Golden Go to be in Discharge range. Even if they Pollen Puff here. That's what I'm aiming for. Yep, they finally click Make It Rain. Okay, Ferrograph Feints. I mean, Sylveus Incineroar is just so good into Golden Go here, so that's a really nice tool to have. Flare Blitz shouldn't KO, but the whole point here is so that I just bring Miraidon back out and just start clicking Discharge onto everything. That actually almost just KOs Golden Go, too. Cool. Should be Pollen Puff. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Terrain disappears. So, now I bring Miraidon out. If I had Blood Moon, this game would basically be a wrap, because I think I could just switch into Blood Moon. But Miraidon comes out. Now I gotta think about clicking Discharge. I've set up for Discharge here. The problem is that Amoonguss here could theoretically pivot out into Incineroar as Golden Go protects. So like what I want to do is switch in Whimsicott right now and click Discharge. Okay. Because essentially all it takes is one Discharge to finish off the Golden Go at this point, right? Yep, so Amoonguss makes the pivot, which is expected. Instinct comes back out. Part of me was thinking about reading like, hey, Golden Go is going to protect here, and then I just go Electro Drift into this slot to get the knockout. They do end up going for protect, okay. Yeah, what's mainly frustrating here is that I can't actually Encore Golden Go, which is a little bit unfortunate. That actually just one-shots Incineroar. Oh my gosh. Nice. Okay. Well, I was a little bit worried about the scenario in which Incineroar survives, because then you have Fake Out pressure, but that just wins us the game. Yeah. So Amoonguss comes back out. And this is what I mean, right? Like, look how good Miraidon was in this game. A lot about it was setting it up. Like, we had turn 1 go really well, but then we spent, like, another few minutes just getting Miraidon out into this point. And a lot about it was, like, resetting the terrain so we could get back into this position. But now I can just protect and discharge. There's really not much they can do here. I think, I mean, you have to start off by trying to go for a double protect, but, like, the Miraidon should win 1v1 against Amoonguss as well. But, like, the win con for them would be you get a double protect, and then I discharge, knock out my own Whimsicott. Like, then I would knock out my own Incineroar as well. And then Amoonguss tries to play the 1v1 against Miraidon, but I think discharge is just doing too much damage to them anyway. But being able to get that one-hit knockout onto Incineroar makes this endgame a lot easier. I think if I didn't get that knockout, I'd have to think about something like protect Whimsicott, maybe even switch out Miraidon out, and then pivot it back in. Okay, Gholdengo attempts the double, does not get it, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is Miraidon, right? We used it to get a one-hit knockout on a Calyrex Ice Rider on turn 1. Discharge, one-hit KOs the Incineroar. Discharge knocks out the Gholdengo at 60%, and then now I can just pivot out the Miraidon out into Incineroar and then end the game with the Draco Meteor. Yep, so that KOs Gholdengo. Gholdengo was actually really difficult to deal with here, though, and I brought Whimsicott because one of the tools about Whimsicott is, let's say they go Incin plus, or Amoonguss Calyrex Ice Rider, you can go switch Incin turn 1. Hold on, let's just Encore here. Pivot into Incineroar. And then Draco can finish off the game for us. But the point that I wanted to make was that the reason why Whimsicott is actually worth bringing in this matchup is because of Encore. So, for example, a lot of times players will lead Amoonguss Calyrex Ice Rider into this team, into Incin plus the Miraidon. So what you can do there is hard switch Incin immediately out into Whimsicott, Electric Terra, Volt Switch, and then a lot of the times they're going to double protect, right? So if they double protect, you can just Encore the Calyrex Ice Rider and then force them to reverse Trick Room in the subsequent turn. But because they ended up having Gholdengo in the back here, Blood Moon would have been a lot more helpful for me. But yeah, I think this game showcased just how incredible Miraidon is, right? We got the knockout onto Calyrex Ice Rider immediately. It was able to get a one-hit knockout onto Incineroar with Discharge as well, which is really a testament to how powerful it is. And that, of course, allows us to ignore Rage Powder stuff from Amoonguss. But given how disastrous turn 1 was for my opponent, honestly, they did a very, very good job finding a way back into this game with the Gholdengo. Yeah, the key thing is, like I said, Miraidon needs to be the carry in a game like this. So, Amoonguss protects. 2 turns of terrain left. We can just Encore them again. Flare Blitz. And there's really not much they can do. So, yeah. Miraidon was just amazing in this game, right? It essentially picked up every knockout. The main thing that was annoying was the Pollen Puff, right? Because, like, if the Helping Hand knockoff plus Helping Hand Flare Blitz combo just knocked out Gholdengo, this game also would have just ended immediately, but Gholdengo did hang out around with, like, 5 to 10% of its HP, and so that was a little bit concerning. And with the leftovers, it's actually healing, like, a meaningful amount each turn as well. But, yeah, like, the upside is that Incineroar is really bulky and can obviously take the Gholdengo's attacks. The main thing is it's, like, the combination of Amoonguss with Regenerator plus Incineroar pivoting in with Fake Out plus Parting Shot and Intimidate plus Pollen Puff plus healing on Gholdengo makes it so it's actually pretty difficult to get knockouts immediately. But all I was looking for was one really, really big turn with Miraidon with Discharge, and we got that. I quickly wanted to just show some damage calcs from that last game for your reference. So Draco Meteor turn 1 against the Calyrex Ice Rider is an 81.3% chance to get a one-hit knockout. Of course, that doesn't factor in accuracy, so it's going to be slightly lower, but the odds are still heavily in our favor, which is why I'm willing to make a play like this. One thing that I've learned a lot while playing with this team is that it's really tempting to go for Electro Drift or Volt Switch because it still does so much damage even when your opponent resists it. But I had a lot of games where I was going for Volt Switch or Electro Drift, they Grass Terra, and I realized if I just Draco Meteor, I just knock their Pokemon out. That's happened against Calyrex Ice Rider, that's happened against Kyogre as well. And so, yeah, in this scenario, we had a really, really good chance to just get the knockout immediately. We got it, and that gave us a huge lead. Against Incineroar, the damage calc actually heavily ranges from Discharge based on how much bulk it has, right? So this is one spread that has more defense investment, which is obviously not relevant to this calc. And so as a result, it's actually a guaranteed one-hit knockout from the Miraidon. But let's say if you go max special defense and your careful nature, then suddenly Discharge is actually never a one-hit knockout. So at minimum, you should expect Discharge to do 76%. And obviously, most people aren't running like max HP, max special defense Incineroar. There's a lot of split between defense and special defense. But the amount of special defense bulk can heavily change how this calc looks. So that's something you might want to consider actually as you EV train your Incineroars, since Miraidon usage, of course, is picking up. But us getting that knockout just ended the game immediately. What? This is so cool. Okay, they have a Miraidon team, but it's Miraidon, Kingambit, Farigiraf, Fire Pawn, Iron Bundle, and Boulder. Wow. So it's interesting because I think when people first saw Miraidon, they were like, oh, people kind of want to use it mainly as a way to set up terrain and activate Cork Drive Pokemon, but then people realized the damage output of it is ridiculous, and so as a result, people actually have not been pairing it as much with Cork Drive Pokemon. Like, this team doesn't even have anything that capitalizes off of it. So, really cool stuff for my opponent's team. I'm definitely bringing Miraidon. I'm definitely bringing Blood Moon. Bundle is actually a really scary Pokemon to go up against, in my opinion. I don't think my Farigiraf is that good. It's probably Incin Wims. Ogerpun's actually interesting, though. It can, like, tank an attack and deal a lot of damage in return. Like, I generally think I'm okay with Whimsicott, Miraidon, Blood Moon, Incin here. Kind of a standard default 4 for this team. Basically, with this team, you really want to move before your opponent moves. And so they don't have Tailwind on their team. So if I bring Whimsicott, that gives me a huge speed advantage. Now, the thing to worry about with this is that Farigiraf on their side could set up Trick Room. One of the ways to get around Farigiraf is to just try to knock it out, right? Bundle and Boulder. Huh. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to just Tailwind Electric Terra Discharge turn 1. Speed boost. Quark Drive. Attack. I really do. They don't have a ground type though, so I could Volt Switch here. Tailwind. Like, I'm thinking Tailwind Electric Terra. Discharge is just really tempting right now because it just does so much damage to both of them. I normally wouldn't recommend going for it, but I feel like in this spot it's honestly fine to go for. Let's do it. I'm mainly worried about, like, a random ground Terra, but... Because the other question is, where is the booster energy on that side? Is Bundle sashed or is it booster energy, right? Because we one-shot Bundle, that's huge for us. Because that's a huge pain for the entire team, basically. Okay, we're going to see a Terra here, though. So Boulder going for, like, ground Terra here would be really scary. Okay, it's going to be Grass. Could be worse. Does Bundle protect? Okay, no protect. Tailwind gets set up. Thinking Bundle has Sash then would be my guess, but let's see. This is pretty scary. I actually might just lose both of my Pokemon right now. So maybe Discharge was not the call. Because, like, this is the exact combination that they needed to survive, right? Sash plus a defensive Terra on Boulder. Which is, like, not out of the blue. Because now they can just Icy Wind and, like, cleave us. But we do get a Paralysis onto Boulder. Yeah, there's Icy Wind. I guess the question is whether or not Boulder one-shots Miraidon. I honestly think it probably does. But unfortunately for them, they get paralyzed. Wow, that's huge. That honestly probably just wins us the game. I mean, it's so early, so I want to just call it immediately, but it puts them in a really tough spot now. Because I can just Hyper Voice here. And Discharge. Actually, it might be better to protect Blood Moon here, but Bundle's going to protect. Okay, that works. Yeah, I mean, that's the upside of clicking Discharge, right? It's like, you can also get bailed out by Paralysis. I'm assuming Boulder would one-shot us, but I don't really know its offensive calcs into Miraidon super well. But we just get the knockout here. Nice. I do think Sash is the right item to run on Bundle. So, yeah. How could I have played around what happened on turn 1 then? I think Volt Switch, Bundle, Tailwind works. But without knowing their full sets, it's like there's a world in which they just protect Bundle and then Boulder goes for an attack onto Miraidon, which is kind of spooky. I'm going to bring out Farigiraf. Oh, Farigiraf is surprising to see here. Okay. I'm okay with that. I actually don't mind going for Protect here and Discharge. Okay, Bundle pivots out. So I could have gone for Hyper Voice there instead, maybe. Yep, they bring out their Miraidon. We go for Protect. I went for Protect here because the way the speeds are, they had gotten an Icy Wind drop and they have the speed boost on their bundle. So if they're max speed bundle, I think they should outpace both of us. Discharge actually just KOs Farigiraf anyway. That's disgusting. That's so much damage. Yeah, so they bring bundle back out. We still have Tailwind up for a turn. So you can Icy Wind here. You'd have to Icy Wind Draco Meteor, though. I'm happy to just Earth Power now into Miraidon. And Discharge. Okay. You just Protect bundle. Nice. Unless Miraidon's also protecting, that just wins us the game. Yeah, because this is max speed Timid Ursaluna, so it actually just outpaces Miraidon. But yeah, this game was us literally just clicking Discharge nonstop. Is that a Soul Vested? It actually took that Discharge better than I expected. Oh, it is AV Miraidon. That's cool. That's really cool. Okay. And they're going to go for Dazzling Gleam. Neat. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, AV Miraidon's really interesting here. Hold on. This game is not over yet. Let's think this through. This pressures with Draco Meteor onto us. Terrain disappearing is actually not a bad thing, because then you lose Quark Drive. I actually think it's fine to just protect Discharge here, because we have Assault Vest and Incineroar in the back, and so, yeah. Basically, I protect here, you knock out Miraidon, instant fake out KOs them, and then Bundle can't win a 2v1. Freeze Dry into us. AP Miraidon's really cool. I've not really seen that too much. They go for Drake. Okay, cool. Yep. KOs us, but that's fine. Incineroar is actually the main win con in the back because we have Assault Vest on it, right? So now I just get to bring that out. Terrain also disappears. Perfect. But I do think Bundle was really scary in this matchup, and I think this game plays out really differently if we don't just get the Paralysis onto Boulder on turn 1. Volt Switch is probably the more conservative play there, especially in best of 1 closed team sheet without knowing what Terra they have, but I just got a little trigger happy with Discharge. Okay, so we can just go Hyper Voice here and fake out into Miraidon. Yeah, they just end up forfeiting. Still possible for them to win, I think, because you could have gone for, with the play that I made, you could have gone for Freeze Dry onto the Ursaluna and then hope for a Hydro Pump crit maybe into the Incineroar. So that would have been their bet. I also could have gone Fake Out just into Bundle and then Hyper Voice, but I figured I'd just take the guaranteed knockout onto Miraidon because I know that's Assault Vested. So, yeah. Either way, really cool team from their end, and I wish we could have seen... Let's actually do the Boulder damage calc into my Miraidon because I'm curious. So a Quark Drive boosted Iron Boulder with max attack does 74% or 130 HP. We had 143 HP. So if they didn't have a way to boost their attack damage further, then we would survive Mighty Cleave as well as the other attacks like Psycho Cut and Close Combat. But of course, if you factor in something like a Life Orb on top of that, then our odds of surviving are very slim. In fact, in all of these damage calcs, there's only one scenario out of the 16 in which we survive, right? And so... I'm going to guess that Boulder probably was going to be able to get a knockout onto us. I feel like Adamant, Max Attack, Life Orb makes the most sense for a moveset like that. So we definitely got lucky surviving on turn 1. And in the end, like even though turn 1 ended up working out for us, I think I should heavily be considering going for Volt Switch instead on that Bundle, for example. Or onto Boulder. I think like Volt Switch on a Boulder just brings its HP really low immediately. And then I can switch into something like Incineroar for that slot instead, right? Incineroar then would eat up some damage, but then I have already baited out the Terra and I've chipped away at you significantly, where then I can just bring out the Miraidon and start discharging everything else. But I actually do think Iron Bundle on the opposing side is really, really scary to go up against. Alright, I'm really happy we're facing against this team because it just won a major tournament over in Europe and also got top 8 at the Indianapolis Regional Championships. In fact, Rajan defeated this team in top 8 in order to win, but it was a really, really crazy set. So I actually think that this matchup is pretty hard because one, I think Zamazenta actually just does really well into this team. Body Press is really difficult to cover for, and Grass Terra makes it even more difficult. Chien-Pao and Rillaboom also exert a ton of offense. So the general 4 that I expect in this matchup are Rilla, Chien-Pao, Zama, Latios. Normally with something like Rilla, Chien-Pao, Rilla, Zama lead. So against that, I'm thinking of leading Incineroar. I haven't actually tried Incineroar Whimsicott, but I kind of like it in this one with Miraidon in the back. The last one is tricky. Blood Moon is worth considering. The problem is it kind of just gets dunked on by Body Press, which is really scary. So then it's like Frigg and Ogerpon makes some sense. I'm actually going to go with Frigg here. And part of the theory behind Friggraph is that it can tank Body Presses somewhat well. But yeah, I've honestly actually struggled in this matchup a decent amount. And even though Rajon was able to win in top 8, I think that it is not an easy matchup. Because I think like Zamazenta is just hard to kind of destroy early on. One of the things you can do is make a hard read and just Draco Meteor it. Zama Latios. Okay. I don't love this matchup. I think turn 1 we can fake out Moonblast, which I don't mind. Yeah, I think that's fine. Once again, the main thing to think about is how we approach beating the Zamazenta. If we can bait it to Terra, then one of the win cons is to just simply Draco Meteor it, which is really strong. Another thing in this matchup is if Zamazenta ever does not click Body Press, Whimsicott can Encore that, which is a really big deal. The problem is that Body Press is just really consistent and safe to go with across the board. But Whims as an offensive option is actually quite valuable here. Okay, they don't protect either Pokemon, so we get Fake Out into Zamazenta. And just get the Moonblast immediately into Latios. Doesn't get the KO, but that's fine. They probably Icy Wind, yeah. So they're probably going to want to Body Press Incin now. Zama flinches. I think I want to switch into Friggraph right now. And Tailwind. Another Icy Wind won't KO us. I should definitely be Tailwinding here. I actually don't hate the option of just Flare Blitzing Zamazenta here and Tailwinding as well. But I think conserving Incin's probably too important right now. So yeah, I'll go into Friggraph and Tailwind. I wonder if it was worth just trying to knock out Latios immediately on turn 1. I think I need Incineroar because Chien-Pao and Rillaboom should be in the back for my opponent. So get Tailwind up. Yeah, they go for Luster Purge. Okay. Okay, let's Whimsicott. Body Press, yeah. This is what I mean. Like, Body Press just 2-hit KOs everything on this team. Oh, man, that is ugly. That was really not great. It's like, this is... Because I'm so far behind in this game already, like, I feel kind of compelled to make a read. But yeah, Body Press on this Pokemon is just nuts, right? It literally just 2-hit KOs everything other than Whimsicott. The read that I want to make right now is that they switch Latios out into Rillaboom and Grass Terra this. So I want to go for Helping Hand. I'll Terra defensively here, just in case. Draco Meteor into Zama. Because I feel like I'm too far behind in this game right now to win otherwise. Okay, show me Rillaboom. Yep, now show me Grass Terra. If they Grass Terra, this is our one way back into the match. I'm gonna Terra first. Okay. They could just protect here, and if they just protect, then it feels bad, but yeah, this is the only play I could find that I think can claw us back into the match. Okay, they didn't Terra, so this unfortunately does not work out. They're probably just protecting then, honestly. Yeah, bummer. But that's the safest play for them to make by far, right? There's not really too much risk of that other than... Because, like, it's really smart for my opponent at this point to just kind of see what I want to lock into. So that means that you're not going to Terra Zamazenta right now. You can just body press us. I can at least knock out the Rillaboom slot. But yeah, basically from this point onwards, I was just hoping for a mistake from their end, and they did a great job not falling for my trap. So I'll go for the knockout on the Rilla here at least. It's still winnable. I don't think it's 100% lost yet, but I lost too many resources early on, and my Tailwind is also expiring. They went for the Terra here, so I actually could have gone for Helping Hand Draco Meteor. They did not need a Terra here. And the reason they don't need a Terra here is because I'm Specs, so I'm locked into Draco Meteor. Wow, that would have been crazy if I just went for Draco on Azama, but I don't think you should ever actually Terra there. There's no reason to. Okay. So we eliminate Rillaboom, which means we now do have terrain control for the remainder of the game. But I'm going to just keep eating body presses up. Yeah, look how much that does. 176 down to 64. The upside is Farigiraf actually healing back enough where I can tank another body press. So yeah, this is still definitely possible, but it's still looking really hard. And honestly, it would have been better to knock out Rillaboom there, because I assume they were just going to go for Woodhammer onto Miraidon. But sometimes when you're playing from behind, you just have to try to go for these really big Hail Mary plays, and even if they don't work out, it's okay. And yeah, if they had Grass Terra that turn we actually got in the knockout, that would have been so sick. Latios comes back out. Last turn of Tailwind now. I mean, I kind of feel like I need to switch Miraidon out into Incineroar, but the problem is it's such an obvious play. But I don't think there's really much I can do around it anyway, right? The other problem is that Chiampao should be their last one, which is really bad. I could also see them messing up here. So I'm going to Helping Hand Draco Zama. The reason for this is because let's say I just like knock out Latios, I switch in Incin, and their last one is Chiampao. I just lose the game for sure from that point onwards. They didn't protect Latios, okay. That was actually a ton of damage. Hold on, we could totally win with Trick Room right now, I think. Oh, they Draco Farigiraf. Ah, that KOs us. Okay. I actually think the other win con here was Draco Latios, Trick Room with Farigiraf, and then I have Incin Farigiraf under Trick Room. And if their last one was Chiampao, we actually have a decent way to win. Well, I'm not sure. Like, I just still get wrecked by Body Press, to be honest. I thought in that position my opponent would consider protecting Latios, which is why I also thought this is an okay play to go for. And if Latios protects, actually, that's also a way back into the game, right? Although Body Press does just destroy us here, so yeah. When I played against this team, I've more see my opponents lead like Chiampao, Rillaboom, Zamazenta, a combo of those, so the Latios lead kind of threw me off a little bit as well. But yeah, this like Zamazenta Toolbox team is honestly so cool, and I think Zamazenta is one of the harder Pokemon to fight against with this team, and so if you struggle against it, like, yeah, that's not out of the ordinary. They just Draco again. It's really cool to see Latios just come back into the format and do so much as well. Yeah, I wonder how this game looks if I Draco Trick Room there. They knock me out. Then I have Incin plus Farigiraf under Trick Room against Zamazenta. But the problem is that Zamazenta hasn't taken any damage. So like, Flare Blitz, Foul Play. I guess I have Helping Hand Flare Blitz, but that's still not knocking it out either. And then you just Body Press me. I'm assuming Chiampao was their last one. I think in this matchup, you pretty much always go with those 4. Yeah. Great play. Great play. It would have been so safe if we actually landed the Helping Hand Draco. You see here, Body Press just absolutely demolishes us. So, yeah. I think, like, Zama is just really difficult to deal with because essentially, like, they have Protect, so they can protect when you try to go for an Electric-type attack into it. They have Grass Terra, and then so, like, you want to force out the Terra first. So maybe leading Miraidon here would have been fine. Like, Whimsicott Miraidon would have been pretty good into them because essentially I think it gets them a little bit scared. And then I can just Tailwind Volt Switch immediately. And if we're able to bait out that Terra immediately, or I just make the read and just straight up help like Draco Meteor into Zamazenta, that could be huge too. In the end, I opted for Incineroar plus Whimsicott because I've often fought against combos of Rillaboom, Chien-Pao, and Zamazenta like I mentioned. But the Latios offered more offense for my opponent, and that made things trickier. But yeah, I think that team is so cool, and it's not surprising that I was able to win a regional championship, and I hope I can feature it on the channel soon. All right, we've got Calyrex Shadow Rider here, which is fun. We're facing against a lot of different archetypes. Shadow Rider, this team generally has a really favorable matchup into. In best of 1, things can still get a little bit spooky. So, for example, two things to watch out for, actually. The first thing here is that they have Urshifu. So, one of the ways that I've lost while playing with this team is that my opponent sets up Rain Dance with Tornadus. And then Urshifu, Choice Scarf, Water Terra, Surging Strikes, Miraidon, which has Electric Terra and just KOs me. That's one thing to watch out for. They also have Indeedee, which means they can potentially imprison Trick Room my Farigiraf. But basically in this matchup, we have a really nice core of... I'm actually thinking of just going Blood Moon plus Farigiraf, honestly. Because it just dishes out so much damage. I don't like leading Miraidon. I normally want Miraidon in the back for this one because they could go like Indeedee Calyrex, for example. Which is kind of scary. So we could go the fast mode, which is like Whimsicott Miraidon, or I could go with Farigiraf. And I think I like Farigiraf a little bit more here. So something like Farigiraf, Incin, Blood Moon plus Miraidon. Well, one thing to consider is that Blood Moon can just absolutely dunk on Calyrex Shadow Rider as well. And so a single Blood Moon onto Calyrex Shadow Rider does a ton of damage. Although one thing to note is that we're Timid instead of Modest. And so with Timid, it's like, I think, a 50-50 roll against Calyrex with no bulk, whereas Modest is a guaranteed knockout. So that's actually one reason why you might want to consider running Modest Ursaluna over Timid. But let's see. They're going to go with Amoonguss and Calyrex. Okay. Huh, it's tempting to just Grass Terra the Amoonguss here immediately. We have a lot of different possible plays here. Fake out Foul Play, Fake out Trick Room, U-turn Trick Room. This, I'm worried about this switching out into Indeedee. I'm also worried about this, like, Rage Powder Nasty Plot turn 1. Rage Powder Nasty Plot would be pretty scary here. Okay. I'm going to Foul Play Calyrex here and U-turn. Okay, we get a Terra out immediately. I suspect they're going to go with Nasty Plot, though, if this is the play. Fairy Terra, probably. Water Terra. Oh, okay. Well, I really don't mind that, because now you're weak to Discharge. Might be Terra Blast, though. Okay. Could be worse. I wonder if that's Specs. It's a ton of damage. Yeah, your Life Orb. Okay, that's fine, I guess. We Foul Play. U-turn. Not the best start, I would say, but it's okay. Now I can bring out Miraidon and set up Electric Terrain so that you can't just Spore me. And I think from here, what I can do is probably just Volt Switch Trick Room the next turn. Yeah. Yep, there's Spore. Yeah, I think I like Trick Room here, and I like Volt Switch into Amoonguss. like, I don't care if you get a strong Astral Barrage off here, because the idea is once I Volt Switch, I just bring out Blood Moon, normal Terra, Helping Hand, Hyper Voice everything. So they just Rage Powder. Yep, that's fine. And they just Astral Barrage. Yep, cool. Works for me. I could have discharged here, but I like setting up Trick Room more and pivoting out into Blood Moon. Maybe there was the opportunity to just hard switch into Blood Moon there instead of Volt Switching, but I like Volt Switching because it it does that much damage. Like, come on. What the heck? So now I bring out Ursaluna. Cool. And we get Trick Room up successfully. Great. Let's just double check all the different things they could pivot into right now. It's pretty safe to just Helping Hand Terra. Hyper Voice. Terra's nice because like ground typing isn't really benefiting us right now. Like the thing I'm most scared of is just side Pollen Puff so that Calyrex survives the turn, but even if they do that, I think it's still fine. So yeah. I think the main thing that's scary about playing against Calyrex in best of 1 on the ladder is you don't know what kind of set they're going to be running. So it could be Life Orb, it could be... I've ran into Life Orb Specs, Focus Sash, Citrus Berry, Nasty Plot, Calm Mind, Leftovers. Whereas in Open Team Sheet, like, just knowing it's set makes it so much easier to fight against. And so that's the thing you have to be most careful of, because this team does have a very positive Calyrex matchup. Here's Helping Hand. Okay, probably just a double protect here, which is fine. Yeah. Now you just can't do this next turn, so I'm happy to just blow through with offense. One thing to consider is setting up a second Trick Room in the late game, like with Indeedee plus Farigiraf, although Miraidon's obviously fast, so yeah. Three turns of Trick Room, 2 turns of Terrain. Side Pollen Puff is what they should be going for right now. So considering Blood Moon here actually is kind of interesting, I think. Just to knock out Calyrex here. But the thing is, Calyrex's damage into Ursaluna isn't that strong here anyway, so I'd rather just Helping Hand Hyper Voice because this covers for them switching. Yeah, like this. Cool. And they bring out Indeedee. Yeah. Great. So this game was really cool, I think, because we got to feature how we like could use Blood Moon under Trick Room. I think a lot of the times with this team, you just kind of go with the faster mode. But yeah, in this case, we're opting for a little bit of the slower mode since we're up against such a fast Pokemon in Shadow Rider. Shadow Rider does not attempt to go for a double protect, so we just get Hyper Voice, and that's a KO. One of the things I haven't mentioned yet, and actually was maybe a little bit careless of me that I didn't cover for, is my opponent switching the Amoonguss in, sorry, Indeedee in to change the terrain and then Spore me. That could have actually been really scary. It's funny because I didn't even mention the possibility of that, but I think that's actually a really strong option for my opponent. They also should have brought Amoonguss in here. Yeah. The way to counter that play, by the way, is because Amoonguss would... Or sorry, actually Calyrex would switch out last, so that's actually a fairly foolproof play, I think. I'll talk about what I should do against that after this, but let's just finish off the game right now. I'll just Helping Hand Hyper Voice again. They should just Protect with both Mons here. I don't know if Indeedee actually has Protect, though, is the thing. Nope, just Dazzling Gleam. Okay. Yeah, that's just a double KO. I don't know why they brought Urshifu out over Amoonguss here as well, but maybe they just didn't think about the possibility of like changing terrain. It's Sash Ursh here, which is fine. You'll get a knockout onto me with close combat, but then I just bring out Miraidon, change the terrain. You can't Spore me anymore. But yeah, this game actually would have looked really different. So the play that I'm talking about is my opponent switches Calyrex Shadow Rider into Indeedee. That overrides Electric Terrain, and then Amoonguss Spores me. Calyrex is the fastest Pokemon, and speed switches out in terms of... Or you switch out based on speed order. So under Trick Room, Calyrex is the slowest Pokemon. And so it switches out last. So the problem with that is I can't counteract by just switching in Miraidon, right? Because their Calyrex will switch out after. And so, yeah, I had missed that option for my opponent. I think they had missed it as well, but that would have completely changed the outcome of this game, quite frankly. I'm happy to now just bring out the Miraidon. Actually, hold on. Let's think about this. I think Incineroar. Because I could still lose to some Pollen Puff shenanigans right now from Amoonguss, I think. Oh, got ahead of ourselves. Main thing to remember is I can't click Fake Out right now. It's the last turn of Trick Room. But if I switch into Miraidon, then I can Fake Out. So Miraidon overrides terrain, Fake Out into Ursh. I think it's fine. Because the Urshifu is also not Choice Scarfed, and so Miraidon just outspeeds both Amoonguss and Urshifu in this endgame. But yeah. This game, I think, it's funny, both of us had kind of missed that possibility, and I'm curious how it would have played out if they had just spored our Blood Moon immediately. Okay, they detect, that's fine. Fake Out into them. Yep. Good detect, though. Nicely done. Spore. Yeah. And this is where terrain is just so good once again. Trick Room expires. I'm happy to now Volt Switch into Urshifu and switch out into Farigiraf to block a potential Aqua Jet critical hit onto us. I don't even know if Aqua Jet crit gets the KO, to be honest, but better safe than sorry. The counter response, by the way, for my opponent here is to just Rage Powder with the Amoonguss in close combat or Surging Strikes. So I could discharge, but the idea by going for this is now I'm a discharge away from winning, right? Yeah, so they Rage Powder here, but Volt Switch will do a ton, and then I can just discharge in the late game. And if they didn't go for Rage Powder there, like, look how much that does, right? We just pivot out. Now I get Incineroar back in. And like, I just don't want to click discharge unless I'm 100% confident I can win the game with it yet, right? Although, I guess from that spot, it's probably fine to just click discharge, because it's like, what is Amoonguss really going to do? I guess I'm worried about, like, Sludge Bomb critical hit or something like that. Surging Strikes into us. We survive. Cool. Yep. Now we can just go for Fake Out onto the Urshifu. Terra Blast onto Amoonguss. Yeah, Discharge was probably fine to go for. I think I just, without knowing Amoonguss's full moves, like, I can lose to something like Urshifu, Detect, Sludge Bomb, Crit Poison, which is really scary. Here's Terra Blast from the Farigiraf onto the Amoonguss, and that's a KO. Nice. Terra Blast is a cool option with this team, because, like, you do decent damage with it, and Ground Terra Blast is something you can go for in matchups as well. But, yeah. Now we can just Terra Blast, knock off. So this game definitely had some surprises. Once again, I think the key thing is Amoonguss, my opponent missing the play of switching Calyrex out into Indeedee to override terrain and then sporing me. The game becomes a lot more interesting from that angle, because once you go for Spore, I can just wake up immediately on the subsequent turn, right? And you have no switch instant to Helping Hand Hyper Voice, and so then it kind of comes down to a battle of, oh, do I get enough sleep turns? Do I wake up sooner than later? You know, if I just wake up immediately the subsequent turn, then the Spore doesn't even really, I think, change things too much. But if I eat up a 3-turn sleep, then that game is just a completely different battle, right? So there were different approaches we could have taken in this game. Especially with them being like Water Life Orb Calyrex, like I think Whimsicott Miraidon becomes a lot stronger, for example. But in best of one, without knowing the Calyrex set, it's harder to like go fight against that with full confidence, for example. But yeah, that was a really fun one. All right, we've got Kyogre, Tornadus, Archaudon, Amoonguss, Landorus, and Fluttermane for this one. So a lot of times Kyogre is going to be defensive Terra, like Grass. Archaudon also can resist our electric type attacks. And then Landorus can switch into them as well. So Draco Meteor as an offensive option for Miraidon is going to be a lot more important. Normally against these compositions, I don't bring Incineroar or Farigiraf. Like, they don't really have any physical attackers here, so Intimidate doesn't make that much sense. And then with Farigiraf, similarly, like, Foul Play, Terra Blast, not super important. So it's going to be Whimsicott, Miraidon, Blood Moon, and Ogerpon. I generally don't mind Whimsicott Miraidon with Ursaluna and Ogerpon in the back. The idea with this is you can often force an early Terra from the opposing side, right? So, for example, let's say my opponent just leads Tornadus Kyogre. Most of the time, the Kyogre is just going to Terra immediately. To which we could just Tailwind and Draco Meteor it. One of the questions I have when fighting against Kyogre is what kind of Terra are you? And what item do you have as well? Because it could be Assault Vest. It's going to be Torn and Flutter Mane. Okay. Torn and Flutter Mane is fine. I think I'm content going for Tailwind Volt Switch here. Oh, interesting. They're not Booster Energy. Okay. Could be Specs then. Yeah, like the play I want to make is Tailwind, Electric Terra, Volt Switch into Flutter. And then with Flutter eliminated, we could bring out Ogerpon immediately. Ogerpon then applies a lot of pressure. Flutter's going to switch out, so I wouldn't be shocked to see Landorus in that slot, but let's see. Okay, Archaludon. I don't mind that. Like, your Archaludon is still taking around 50% at least from this if it's Assault Vest, I think. So, getting this much early damage on Archaludon is honestly a really big deal. Okay. And if they set up Tailwind, that's totally fine, because I can just Encore you next turn, and I generally have the speed advantage. So, yeah, I'd say this is a pretty favorable turn 1 for us. Now you're about to see how much damage this Pokemon can do. Electric Terra, Terrain boosted, Specs boosted, Volt Switch. Yeah, does just around 50%. That basically confirms the Assault Vest on Archaludon as well, so that's good to know. Actually curious how fast our Archaludon is relative to Ursaluna, since this is max speed. I think for now I probably prefer bringing out Ogerpon. So Torn could be max speed here, which means you're faster than Ogerpon. Bleak Wind is a little bit scary here, so I'm actually thinking about clicking Encore onto Tornadus as well as Ivy Cudgel onto it. Just so you don't get a Bleak Wind off. Archaludon is a little bit spooky, but you're not going to be able to knock out either of my Pokemon in one hit thanks to Focus Sash and Sturdy. So here's Encore. Okay, we're just faster anyway. Nice. Ivy Cudgel comes out. You're not Focus Sash, so we just knock out Tornadus. Nice. And they just Flash Cannon into Whimsicott. Perfect. One thing to think about, by the way, is just Encoring the Archaludon into Flash Cannon, because with that, then we're able to resist with the Miraidon, and then Blood Moon's not taking that much damage from a neutral Flash Cannon either. So pretty good positioning so far. I've obviously committed my Terra. One thing to think about is actually getting more Tailwind up. Kyogre comes out immediately here. 2 turns of Tailwind left. I think Kyogre here should probably Terra into, say, Grass is my expectation. Yeah. I don't know if I really need an extra Terra here, honestly. Or sorry, extra Tailwind. The extra Tailwind actually does help out, though, for Ursaluna. So this turn, I'm actually thinking of protecting with both Pokemon. Yeah. Kyogre doesn't Terra. Okay, that makes me think it's protecting here this turn. Because otherwise, you're just vulnerable to Power Whip. Wow. Huh. Okay. Surprising to see that. Interesting. Origin Pulse comes out and just Flash Cannon, yeah. So the decision of whether or not it's worth it to switch Whimsicott out right now. It would allow me to set up Tailwind again, but I don't really have a great switch in, right? It's something I have to take Origin Pulse. And that's something probably is going to be Miraidon. I think it is worth switching, though. Because unless they're Specs, they shouldn't KO. And if they're Specs and they don't Terra, like this last turn, you can just Power Whip to KO. Because I think Blood Moon is pretty useless unless I set up Tailwind again, essentially. There's just too much that threatens it and outspeeds it. Okay, I mean, I'd expect Kyogre to Terra now. No Terra, okay. So they're conserving it for the Flutter Mane specifically. But this is perfect, because Flash Cannon now should just knock out, and there's Scarf Kyogre here. Flash Cannon should just knock out the Ogerpon. Yep, exactly. I bring out Whimsicott, and I just go Tailwind Electro Drift. Yep, this is exactly why I wanted to conserve Tailwind. So, the lack of Terra, I don't know, if you're Water Terra, I think it's worth it, but I think they probably didn't consider going for Water Terra to get extra damage on whatever is switching in. So, one of the things about this team is that it can get a little bit volatile when you have, like, Tailwind set up, but you want to stagger or you want to reset Tailwind because there aren't that many great defensive switches. And in this matchup in particular, it's like the remaining Pokemon that we didn't bring in this matchup were Incineroar and Farigiraf. And so, like, well-positioned Water-type damage can be really powerful. But, yeah. Now we just get Whimsicott out again. We set up Tailwind again. I think the main thing is considering who to Electro Drift. Flutter Mane theoretically could have Protect. But if they Protect, actually, we just win the game. Because you knock out something, and then if you knock out Whimsicott, I just bring out Blood Moon and then Earth Power Electro Drift. And if you knock out Miraidon, I just Encore you and then Earth Power. Yeah. So it's fine to just Electro Drift into Flutter here. And Tailwind, I think. Just double check. 1 turn of Terrain, 3 turns of Rain. Yeah, so Drift, Tailwind. They've also been playing this game like it's Specs Flutter Mane, but no Terra comes out at all. Okay. So here's Electro Drift. This is as powerful as that you'll get. Into the Flutter. Yep, that's a one-hit knockout. Cool. I thought about targeting our Chaladon there, but even if you're Sash Flutter, it's fine, because then I just bring out Blood Moon, Earth Power knocks out our Chaladon, and Flutter should not be able to knock out Blood Moon that easily with Sash. I guess if you're Sash Fairy Terra, I wonder if 2 Fairy Terra Moonblast would do it. But yeah, Miraidon was awesome in this game. It gave us a lot of chip damage early, secured a knockout onto the Flutter here as well. And Ogerpon was really key for us in this game as well. Just getting that knockout onto the Kyogre. So games like this can be pretty intense. Like, Kyogre is obviously quite weak into Miraidon, but with our Chaladon and Assault Vest, as well as them having Scarf Kyogre, they actually had a speed advantage. And so I think in best of 1, Kyogre's item can make things kind of volatile. Kyogre's item and Terra type, right? But yeah, at the end of the day, being able to set up Tailwind twice was really great here for us. And I don't think Incineroar or Farigiraf really would have done too much for us. You can consider Incineroar in this matchup because you could theoretically Grass Terra and then go for like a knockoff, for example. And with the Assault Vest, it's actually pretty solid. But I just don't love it. So we're going to Moonblast here, and Earth Power will finish off the Archaladon. Beautiful. I'm mainly curious just what Terras they had in this game, because they just didn't Terra at all, and I think Kyogre had the opportunity to Terra the turn where it just went down. And I'm mainly curious if it had Terra'd, whether or not it would have been able to get the one hit onto Miraidon. I think Miraidon, it looked like it still would survive with a little bit of HP, but yeah, the game definitely would have felt closer, and if it was a defensive Terra, obviously you'd be able to survive the Power Whip. Whoa. Okay, I don't know what's going on here, but there's a lot of cool stuff. Reshiram, Regigigas and Weezing, Whimsicott, Jugulis, as well as Sandy Shocks. Everything about this team is wild. Like, the only thing that's remotely standard is Whimsicott. Huh. Okay. Even without our abilities, like, I think Miraidon's still pretty powerful here. Ogerpon is actually kind of interesting for offense here as well. I don't think we need Incineroar here. And I don't think we need Farigiraf either. So I'm thinking something like Whimsicott plus the Miraidon, Ursaluna, and Ogerpon at the back. But yeah, everything about this team is fascinating to me. So I'm excited to just fight against it. Now, one of the things to obviously consider is that the Reshiram here will resist Miraidon. electric type attacks. But of course we could Draco Meteor it. So I think Reshiram I would often expect to be maybe like Life Orb, Assault Vest for example. I don't know what Terra wants to run, so I will probably want to Volt Switch against it if I see it. But it's just going to be Weezing Gigas to start for my opponent. Okay. Interesting. Got Ogerpon and Ursaluna in the back. I really wonder if like Moonblast, Electric Terra, and just Electro Drift gets the knockout onto Gigas. Maybe I should give Gigas some more credit though. I could also Tailwind. Yeah, I don't think I'm opposed to Tailwind and then just Volt Switch turn 1 here. Oh, wow. They actually did not protect the... Oh, okay. We definitely would have knocked out the Regigigas there if I Terra Electro Drifted. Maybe gave it too much credit for its bulk, but this is also fine. I think I'm happy to go out into the... I'd rather go into Ursaluna, I think, now that we've set up Tailwind. So Ursaluna comes out. We're going to set up Tailwind. Crush Grip. Okay. It's a lot of damage, but it doesn't get the KO, and it's just Taunt coming out. Works for me. Okay. Leftovers Regigigas. Don't see that every day. Interesting. Okay. I'm happy to switch out into Miraidon now. And I think here I'm happy to just Blood Moon into Regigigas. Like, I'm not sure Weezing can even get the knockout onto Ursaluna. And then I don't want to Terra Normal here because I'd rather Terra Electric the Miraidon, I think. Ideal output here would be like them just double protecting because then I just get Miraidon out. I can just like Electric Terra Discharge plus Hyper Voice, for example. But Leftovers plus Crush Grip in itself is pretty interesting. Normally with Regigigas I expect like more offense. Regigigas does get access to Wide Guard, so yeah, I also don't want to Hyper Voice here until I confirm its moveset. Beautiful, they protect Weezing. This is what makes using Weezing really awkward, is that, like, it's fairly predictable when it wants to protect, and even if it weren't to protect there, like, what is it really doing to me that's scaring me right now, right? So, yeah, this is a great position where we've set up Tailwind, we've gotten 2 of our strongest attackers out on the field. Weezing's really not providing very much for my opponent. So I would expect Reshiram to come out right now. Yep. Okay. I honestly expect a Terra out of this. With Ogerpon and Whimsicott in the back, I think I'm happy to just send it Electric Terra, which also helps defensively here. Discharge and Hyper Voice. Because I think if you're Reshiram here, you're probably worried about eating up Draco Meteor, so I think a defensive Terra from their end makes sense. And I'm not sure you can get a one-hit knockout onto the Miraidon unless you're Choice Spec specifically. By going for Electric Terra here, also remove Dragon typing, so your Dragon type attacks won't do super effective damage anymore. And we still have Ogerpon for late game offense, which can be valuable into Jugulis, for example, in the back. Sandy Shocks as their final one is something I probably have to be a little bit careful about, though. So we just want to think about that. But we've got Power Whip on Ogerpon, which obviously is quite good against it. So Miraidon here is going to send it. We're going to Terra. Yep, there's the Terra from their end. Should be on Reshiram. I would expect Fairy Terra, honestly, but let's see what people are running. Could be, like, Grass. Yep, beautiful. This is one of the most satisfying things about Miraidon, is that people often go for Fairy Terra to try to survive and become immune to Draco Meteor, but then I just get to use Electric-type attacks, which is awesome. So, here's Discharge coming out. That was a crit. That was insane damage. Citrus Berry comes out. Yeah, this is not even terrain boosted either. And then now Ursaluna just gets Hyper Voice off. That's a double KO. Beautiful. Oh, how satisfying. Yeah, if you can get these two out on the field next to each other, the damage output is just ridiculous. So, like, in this position, even if the Reshiram doesn't Terra, we still do reasonable damage, right? And it's like, would you really risk the game immediately off not tearing, right? Because then if a Draco goes into that slot, you just lose immediately. So, like, Miraidon just exerting so much speed and offense makes it really difficult to deal with. And one thing that was really common, if you saw this team at the Indianapolis Regionals, is, like, Rajan did such a good job of just going for Volt Switches onto things that would normally try to Fairy Terra, like Raging Bolt, for example. This is also the awkward thing. Like, my opponent had Whimsicott in the back, and back Whimsicott can be fairly difficult to use sometimes, right? Because by not leading Whimsicott, I just got Tailwind up early on. Weezing canceling the abilities honestly did not really prevent me from much. It obviously denied me Electric Terrain, but we still were able to do a lot of damage. And Regigigas just wasn't like that influential of a Pokemon, right? I think the problem is Regigigas, even when Weezing cancels its ability out, is still like kind of slow relative to these really fast restricted Pokemon like Miraidon, for example. So being able to Volt Switch out, being able to get the Ursaluna out, being able to set up Tailwind despite them canceling Prankster was all really good for us. Alright, we've got an opposing Miraidon team here with Farigiraf, Tornadus, Thundurus, Ursaluna, Blood Moon, and Urshifu. I'm mainly worried about Eerie Impulse, I would say, from their Thundurus. Ogerpon's actually pretty interesting as a lead here. I don't think we... like, I actually would want to bring Farigiraf just to block their Thundurus. Against opposing Miraidons, I really value Ursaluna, because one thing you can do is switch in Ursaluna as they try to Volt Switch, and if you get that, you're going to be in really good shape if they're the Choice Specs variant. So, like, I'm inclined to want to go Whimsicott, Miraidon, Ursaluna, and the Ogerpon here. I think Incineroar has little value since they're almost all special attackers other than Urshifu, and Urshifu can obviously crit through. And then Farigiraf, similar reasoning, like, the Electric Seed becomes a lot less valuable. I would consider bringing this just to stop Thundurus, and so, like, that's the main incentive for it. But I think I'm generally okay with Whimsicott, Miraidon lead here with Ursaluna and Ogerpon. I also thought about just Ogerpon, Miraidon immediately. One thing you could do with that is, like, follow me, Volt Switch, go into Whimsicott. But, yeah, we have fast Pokemon here. One of the things to think about, though, is, like, the Miraidon versus Miraidon speed matchup. Modest is really important for damage output, but as the meta progresses, I wouldn't be surprised to see some people move to Timid. And they're just going to go with Miraidon and Ursaluna immediately. Okay. I mean, against this, I lean towards wanting to go for something like Tailwind, Draco, Meteor. Tailwind here. Question is whether or not we think they're going to Terra and whether or not I want to Terra, because Blood Moon under Tailwind is also kind of a beast into their team. Yeah, so I'm actually thinking about just Tailwinding here and not Terraring and then just going for Draco onto Blood Moon. Okay, they're going to commit a Terra here. I would expect their Miraidon to maybe Terra. Yep. Into... it could be Fairy. Nope, just Electric here. Okay, that's fine. Although it means I could have just Draco that slot and Tailwinded. Okay, no Protects here, though, so that's good. We get Tailwind up. Draco doesn't miss. Beautiful. That's a one-hit KO. Excellent. Okay, good start. Let's see what they go for now. Maybe a Draco of theirs onto mine. Nope, they just offer Discharge. Okay, I really don't mind that. Because, yeah, we have really good resistance to that with Miraidon, so I'll gladly take that turn. Whimsicott gets paralyzed, which is not amazing, but it's fine. I think this next turn, like, I could pretty easily switch my Miraidon out into the Ursaluna. It's a question of what they want to bring in here. Tornadus or Thundurus makes sense, but actually it's going to be Urshifu. Okay. Dark Ursh. Which means you still have really good speed control here. The Paralysis is a little bit annoying. I can Encore you into Discharge, which makes you fairly ineffective. So I'm going to go for that. Encore you into Discharge. And then Draco Meteor, I think, into Urshifu. They might have to Protect here, actually, because if your Specs Discharge. I'm actually going to Moonblast here. Draco into Miraidon. Yep, they detect. Like, I'm fairly sure your choice specs here, which is why I decided to go for this instead. Okay, Draco connects. Beautiful. That's still disgusting damage. That's -2 Draco. Wow. And they just go for discharge again. Cool. Works for me. Now I can just bring out the Ursaluna. The question is whether or not Sucker Punch gets the KO here onto the Miraidon. I think it might. Because with Ursaluna out now, we're timid, which is really nice. So we just want to count Tailwind turns. There's still 2 left. I think here it's fine a Hyper Voice. We don't necessarily need to commit Terra yet, because I might want to Terra Ogre instead. But essentially a Hyper Voice here and Dracoing into Urshifu is fine. They have to Sucker Punch Miraidon. If Sucker Punch doesn't KO, we just win the game. Okay. Miraidon switches. That's fine. What are you bringing out? Farigiraf. Okay, that's totally fine. Oh, and they don't Sucker Punch. Okay, cool. Then we just win off this. Look how much these Draco Meteors are doing. This is ridiculous. -4 Draco Meteor. Hyper Voice comes out, gets the KO. They bring Miraidon back out, but we still have Tailwind up. So I just outspeed and KO now. So yeah, I think like what gave us a huge advantage in this game was just maintaining the speed, right? They didn't want to opt for Tailwind, and so with Whimsicott out, we were able to just outpace everything, which was wonderful. Cool. 2 turns of Electric Terrain, last turn of Tailwind. We can just send it. Normal Terra, Hyper Voice here, and Draco into Miraidon. This is the downside of committing to Discharge on turn 1. I was actually really shocked to see them discharge because my Miraidon resists it so well. So I wonder if they were thinking I was going to switch out or maybe go for a Terra, for example. And Discharge, I think, is really strong Miraidon, but you normally want to close out the game with it. I think using it earlier on in the battle can punish you pretty heavily, and as a result, they just weren't able to threaten me with nearly as much damage, and like -2, -4 Draco Meteor is still so powerful into my opponent's composition because they're not very bulky either. But yeah, this is just another example of a game where Miraidon and the Ursaluna get positioned really well next to each other and just dish out so much damage across the board. I think the main thing I was thinking about on turn 1 is, do I want to like click Draco onto their Miraidon, since often like they are going to be spexed. But Fairy Terra Miraidon is a thing, and I really don't want to like Draco into a Fairy Terra Miraidon and then just get Earth powered and knocked out, right? Because Miraidon's so essential. And in that position, even if the Ursaluna say protects and they Draco into us and get a knockout, well then I have Encore Pressure, I have Tailwind set up, and I get a free switch into my Ursaluna. And then my Ursaluna can start putting out a ton of damage across the board. So even in the worst case scenario there, which was protect Ursaluna, them Dracoing me, I still think it would have been okay. But then committing to Discharge, it just made the game so much easier for us afterwards. So yeah, these can be really fast-paced games, but that's what happens when you have so much damage on this team. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one, so thank you so much as always for joining me. So fun to feature Miraidon, which has instantly proven itself to be one of the top contenders in this format, and I hope let people stop sleeping on this Pokemon now because it is absolutely incredible. Huge congratulations to Rajan and Aaron for their accomplishments again at Indianapolis Regionals. Thanks to you all for watching, and I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.